Alison Sargent joins me on the set to take a look at what the papers have been saying today. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Jeannie.
We're going to start in the Democratic Republic of Congo with reactions to that surprise election result. The new president-elect is Félix Tshisekedi, who is the winner of that election.
That's right, and who would have believed it? That's the headline from the Ghanaian website, The Jelly, this morning. They call Tshisekedi's victory the outcome that no one could have predicted, and they write that with all of the problems created for the opposition, with all the advantages that Kabila's candidate was getting, no one would have bet on Tshisekedi, but he did it, and the DRC is now on its way to their first democratic transfer of power, and the website is really celebrating this. They say they want to cry bravo in the streets to all Congolese people who, quote, refused to give in to intimidation and threats.
Now, his reported victory, still, it's not official yet, is surprising. It's unexpected. Some people are even wondering if it wasn't perhaps negotiated.
That's right. Did former President Joseph Kabila perhaps have something to do with Tshisekedi's victory? That's what the website Afrique Arabia is wondering. Polling had shown the other main opposition candidate, Martin Fayulu, in the lead. The website points out that of all the opposition candidates, Tshisekedi was really the least bad option for Kabila. They also point to the fact that in recent interviews, Félix Tshisekedi had really reached out to the former president. Whatever went on, the site concludes that Kabila and his supporters really aren't going away anytime soon. According to the site, people loyal to Kabila still control many sectors of the country, including the Constitutional Court, which is going to be responsible for validating these election results.
Now, from that surprise election result in the DRC to a controversial inauguration today in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro set to be sworn in for his second term, but it's a term that many countries aren't recognizing.
That's right. The U.S. has called it a sham inauguration, and 12 Latin American countries have already said they're refusing to recognize Maduro's second term. We can start with this cartoon from a Honduran paper that summarizes how these countries see the situation. Maduro there clinging onto this tree that represents Venezuela. That caption suggests that Maduro is clinging to the tree for its fruits, but you can see that there are no fruits because critics say that Maduro has really run Venezuela into the ground. Lots of criticism in Venezuela's independent press as well. This editorial from local paper El Nacional says that Maduro is usurping power, and they use some very colorful metaphors to describe his inauguration today. They're calling it a forced birth by uncertified doctors and the baptism of a deformed creature. Not surprisingly, Jeannie, the international press is very critical of Maduro as well. The Washington Post writes in its editorial today that the crisis in Venezuela is the biggest that Latin America has ever seen, and their outlook here is quite bleak. They write that there's no solution coming from either inside or outside of the country in sight.
Alison, let's turn now to the United States with a story that has been huge on social media recently. These are allegations of sexual misconduct against the singer R. Kelly, who's now facing a new criminal investigation.
Right. Now, rumors of R. Kelly's sexually abusing young women have actually been swirling around for over 2 decades, since the early 90s, but they really came surging into the spotlight last weekend after the channel Lifetime released a series documenting the abuse. It's called Surviving R. Kelly. They spoke to survivors and their family members, but also to R. Kelly's own siblings and business associates. All of this to paint a picture not only of how he pulled underage women into his orbit to abuse them, but also how he got away with it. Now, this docuseries had record viewership. Over 2 million people watched each episode. They then tweeted about it with the hashtag Surviving R. Kelly. Thanks to this movement, many say R. Kelly's time is finally up. He's facing this new criminal investigation. Some radios, meanwhile, have announced they'll stop playing his songs. This writer in The Guardian calls it a watershed moment for women of color. And that's because that's who R. Kelly's victims were. They were young women of color from Chicago and Atlanta. And many people felt that this was one of the main reasons that R. Kelly managed to get away with it for so long, that his victims weren't being heard and taken as seriously because they were non-white women. And that's something that's come up a lot in discussions of sexual assault, that there's sort of a racial discrepancy in how victims and perpetrators are treated. And this writer says it's important that that conversation around race and sexual assault continues.
Alison, just to wrap up now, a story that you might think should just be relegated to the tabloids, but it's actually getting a lot of front-page attention.
That's right. You can see it here on the front page of the Times. This is a divorce story, but it's not just any divorce story, is it, Jeannie? It's the story of Jeff Bezos' divorce, one of the richest man in the world. The UK's Metro newspaper, meanwhile, is calling it the $137 billion divorce. I think it's in so many papers today, you could say, because there's a lot of schadenfreude going around, maybe because he is so wealthy. Anyway, $137 billion, that's how much Bezos was worth at the last tally. They're speculating that his wife could get half of his fortune in the settlement, which would make her by far the richest woman in the world, according to Bloomberg. I have to say, I find it a little upsetting that the world's richest woman would owe her fortune to a divorce. And I was also upset reading this article to learn that of the 66 women on Bloomberg's wealth index, only 6 of them are self-made. All of the rest of them got their money from either divorce or inheritance. So maybe the lesson in all of this is that we need to make more opportunities for women to create their own wealth.
I think you might be right, Allison. Thank you for that. Allison Sargent with that look at the press review today. Thanks to you. Thanks to you for watching France 24. Don't forget, you can get a closer look at the press review if you like on our website. The address is france24.com.